A sagacious individual ought to be capable of harboring his joy within himself. Diogenes of Sinope, you were brought up to accept that a true male sheds blood for affection, that a man must capture a woman's affection to validate his value, that the pursuit is honorable, that yearning makes one human. Yet no one informed you that this ritual, this quest, this illusion was crafted to fracture you. They sold you a deception, and you compensated with your moments, your dignity, your spirit. Diogenes of Sinope, the man who strode unshod through the grime of Athens, who rested in a cask and lit his lamp at noon, claiming to be seeking a truthful man, perceived the world in another light. While other philosophers composed tomes on morality and the cosmos, Diogenes dismissed tradition and directed his mockery at men bound by longing. A wise man, he proclaimed, should carry his contentment inside himself. But you placed your bliss in her grin, her focus, her validation, and in that action, you surrendered the keys to your self-respect. You pursue women not from affection but from emptiness. You believe you are heading toward closeness, but you are merely fleeing from your reflection. Diogenes would chuckle, and he did. He once witnessed a youth flush red before a lovely lady and exclaimed, "Don't be embarrassed, the blame lies not with you, but with nature, for crafting such beings irresistible to fools." You think your craving is romantic, he labeled it pitiful. You imagine your chase is courageous, he saw it as frailty cloaked in fragrance. Diogenes relieved himself openly and pleasured himself in the marketplace. When the public gasped in shock, he replied, "If only rubbing my belly could end hunger too." Not because he lacked embarrassment, but to reveal yours. Your shame is the collar they tied to your manliness. You suppress your urges not to master them, but to appear desirable to the women you pursue. You act the gentleman not out of virtue, but to boost your odds of being selected. You wear disguises, Diogenes torched disguises. You build shrines, he demolished them with sarcasm. You enter rooms searching for beauty, Diogenes entered rooms seeking fools, and often he found them in the faces of men like you, hungry, eager, adorned like peacocks, yearning for fragments of recognition. "I discarded my cup," he once said, "when I observed a child drink with bare hands." He reduced his existence to the core while you furnish your prison. You pursue silk without having tamed steel. Diogenes wasn't opposed to women, he was opposed to delusion. And there's no myth more harmful to a man than the notion that a woman's affection will redeem him. He is richest, Diogenes stated, who is most satisfied with the least. Yet you are never satisfied. You scroll, you swipe, you await a message like it's a remedy. You sit among phantoms of women who never cared, or worse, those who once did until you gave them everything. And they grew disinterested. You were told to pursue to prove your value, but Diogenes didn't pursue. He remained still and let truth embarrass the world. When Alexander the Great, ruler of the known world, found Diogenes basking in sunlight and asked, "What can I do for you?" Diogenes didn't bow, didn't flatter, didn't pretend to be impressed. He simply said, "Yes, move away from my son." That is strength. That is liberation. That is a man who does not chase. But you pursue women like they are the sun, you revolve around them like moons, deprived of heat. You reshape yourself for their moods, their phrases, their whims. You trim parts of yourself to fit their wants and call it love. Diogenes would call it servitude, not because women enslave you, but because you willingly entered the shackles, smiling with flowers in hand. He once said, "The most gorgeous woman is nothing without integrity, and integrity is nothing without truth. And the truth is, most of what you label love is merely your terror of solitude, cloaked in sonnets. Most of what you offer is not kindness, but bargaining. You provide your time, your vigor, your drive, hoping she'll return a reflection of your worth. That's not love. That's a deal, a contract dressed in blooms. And when that deal collapses, when she becomes distant, when she stops replying, when your love grows, but hers shrinks, you are shattered. Not because you lost her, but because you lost the mirror that made you feel whole. Diogenes required no mirror. He confronted life directly, no flattery, no false hopes, no perfume on rot. He exposed falsehoods until the world had to laugh or rage. Because nothing enrages people more than being forced to perceive the truth. So I ask, not as a moralist, nor as a critic, but as a fellow man. When will you stop chasing what cannot rescue you? When will you cease to confuse compliance with affection, self-sacrifice with intimacy, self-erasure with devotion? Because the woman you pursue is not your foe, your fantasy of her is. You think it's devotion, but it's dependency. You call it fire, but it's fixation. You keep telling yourself, she's different. This one gets me. But Diogenes said, it is the divine's right to desire nothing, and of godlike men to desire little. So tell me, what godlike man whimpers when a woman doesn't text back? You weren't born to pursue. You weren't made to orbit. You were built to construct. But somewhere along the journey, they deceived you, made you believe your worth comes from being selected, not from choosing. Now, you scroll like a pauper, smile through rejection like a jester, and swallow your ego like it's a supplement. You call it romance, he would have called it rot. Diogenes walked barefoot through the avenues, mocked the elite to their faces, and lived on scraps like a wolf amid lambs. But even the most mighty man on earth, Alexander, was humbled before him. Why? Because Diogenes had nothing to surrender, and a man with nothing to forfeit cannot be dominated. But you give her everything before she even requests it. You lose rest over her indifference. You adjust your attire, your tone, your life trajectory, just to suit her tastes. You say it's romance, but Diogenes would howl like a mutt at your performance and call it what it is, subjugation. And the most painful truth, she doesn't admire it. Not because she's vicious, but because deep down, she understands what Diogenes always knew. What is chased loses value. What pursues doesn't own, it is owned. And women, knowingly or not, are drawn to strength, not submission, to independence, not pleading. Your willingness to satisfy has rendered you invisible. Your eagerness has made you noise. You call it devotion, but to her, it looks like desperation. And when she leaves, not out of malice, but out of monotony, instinct, or plain tiredness, you'll feel betrayed. But ask yourself honestly, did you love her, or did you love who you got to be near her? Did you love her essence, or the way her presence masked your void? Diogenes would say, I seek a man, not just a male, a spirit forged by fire, not praise. A man who can stand bare under the sky, and still feel complete, not a boy who needs a woman's embrace to validate his soul. Not a follower seeking a queen, but a sovereign commanding his essence. And maybe that's the sting, the realization that it wasn't her who was the dream, but the feeling of being wanted. And when that feeling vanishes, so does your sense of self. So you return to the world, wounded and bewildered. Seeking another savior in makeup, another divinity to kneel before, another pair of eyes that let you feel like a man. Because you've never learned to feel like one without them. And that is the tragedy. You were taught to conquer peaks, but not your own sight. To chase gold, but not wisdom. To attract women, but not to ask why. And when you finally ask, when you finally stop and observe your life, you see it's been spent chasing silhouettes. Who tolerated you? Women who only loved the version of you that benefited them. And you thought that was normal. Diogenes didn't think it was normal, he thought it was pathetic. He once said, "Other dogs bite only their enemies, I bite even my friends to save them. So let me bite you now, brother, not to hurt you, but to awaken you. Stop chasing what flees. Stop trading your soul for scraps. Stop believing that love is earned by shrinking yourself. A man who knows his worth doesn't chase, he decides. He builds. He moves forward. And if she wants to walk beside him, wonderful. If not, he continues walking." That was Diogenes. That can be you. But only if you are willing to unlearn the fantasy and confront the raw, harsh truth. The man who chases women is not valiant. He is not passionate. He is not in love. He is lost. And no woman, no matter how breathtaking, will lead you back to yourself. You tell yourself it's just part of manhood, the longing, the pursuit, the ache. You absorb movies that glorify the chase. You hear songs that confuse yearning for devotion. And somewhere deep inside, you convince yourself that enduring rejection proves your sincerity. That pain validates your desire. But Diogenes would scoff at that. He once stood before a statue and begged it for alms. When asked why, he said, "I'm learning how to be denied." That was his protest. His rebellion. He turned society's nonsense into comedy. He made begging for money, for affection, look as ridiculous as it is. And here you are. A modern man with knowledge, freedom, and tools Diogenes could only dream of. Yet you beg. Not for sustenance, for validation. You call her 10 times after silence. You send paragraphs she never reads. You dilute your words to seem just right. You live on trial in your own mind. Always hoping to be found enough. And without even realizing it, you become what Diogenes most pitied. A man shackled by invisible chains. Because that's what the chase is. Not romance. Not strength. Not bravery. Servitude. And you, my brother, are its willing servant. Diogenes said, "I know nothing except the fact of my ignorance." He embraced his flaws and wore them like armor. But you conceal yours like blemishes. You offer an edited version of yourself, hoping the performance earns affection. But real strength doesn't perform. It doesn't adjust itself to be appealing. Real strength steps forward and says, "Take it or leave it." Do you know why Diogenes, who had nothing, was more powerful than kings? Because he couldn't be seduced. Not by gold. Not by praise. Not by beauty. He didn't chase because he had nothing to prove. And until you reach that place, until your self-respect is louder than your loneliness, you will keep chasing what you believe will complete you. And you will never be complete. Let me tell you something no one dares say out loud. She doesn't admire your effort. She doesn't respect your persistence. She doesn't fall in love with your sacrifice. She might appreciate it. She might enjoy it. But she is not captivated by it. Because what draws a woman, what makes her stay, is not the man who follows her, but the man she cannot control. Here's the cruel irony. The moment you stop chasing her is the moment she finally notices you. Not because you are playing games, not because you are being strategic, but because when a man finally finds peace in his own skin, when he no longer needs her to validate his worth, he becomes rare. He becomes real. Diogenes didn't need reflection. He carried his own light. He once walked through the marketplace in broad daylight, holding a lantern, saying, "I am looking for a man." And still, the world could not give him one. Because most men, then and now, are not men. They are roles. They are scripts. They are hollow outlines waiting to be filled by female approval. But the man who stops chasing, he is something else. He is whole. He is dangerous. Because he no longer fears solitude. And the man who does not fear being alone cannot be manipulated, cannot be bought, cannot be tamed. That is what Diogenes wanted for you. Not to despise women, not to reject love, but to stop building your identity on the hope of being loved. To stop outsourcing your confidence to the gaze of a stranger. To stop believing that your greatest purpose is to be chosen, when your true purpose is to choose yourself. You think chasing her makes you worthy of her, but it only proves you were never worthy of yourself. And that is the tragedy. You chase because you think love will fill you. But real love begins when you no longer need to be filled. When you stop bleeding out your power in hopes someone will patch your wounds. Diogenes never begged for bandages. He walked through life, exposed, honest, free. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. So I ask you again, when will you stop running? Because she is not the destination. You are. You hear the word love and your heart still flinches. You still want it. Even after all the disappointments, the unanswered texts, the one-sided efforts. You still believe, deep down, that somewhere, there's a woman who will make it all make sense. Who will redeem the pain. Who will finally see you and stay. But Diogenes would look you in the eye and say, "You've become addicted to hope. And hope is the bait they use to tame you." That's what makes the chase so lethal. Not that it fails, but that it almost works. Just enough to keep you moving. A smile here. A compliment there. A late night talk that hints at intimacy but offers nothing. And you bite. Again and again. Not because you are weak, but because you were trained to treat crumbs like a feast. Every time she gives a little, you imagine the whole. You build futures from fragments. You confuse interest with devotion, curiosity with care. And you keep showing up. Offering your best self, your honest self, your loyal self. And you keep leaving with less than you brought. You drain yourself, chasing something never promised. And you call it effort. You call it love. But Diogenes would call it delusion. He once said, "I do not possess, so I am not possessed." Understand this. The more you invest in a woman who hasn't earned it, the more she owns you. Not out of cruelty, not even consciously. But power doesn't need intent to be real. She shapes your thoughts, your mood, your self-worth, simply by being the one you can't stop thinking about. And while you daydream of her, what dreams die inside you? While you refresh her last seen status, what passions remain unseen within you? You give your attention to her silence, her mystery, her inconsistency. But when will you turn that gaze inward? When will you confront the parts of yourself that made this chase feel like destiny? Because chasing her was never about her. It was about escaping yourself. She became the mirage that helped you avoid the desert within. That's why it hurts so much when she disappears. Because the silence that remains is no longer hers. It's yours. Diogenes didn't fear silence. He lived in it. He filled it with laughter, with truth, with rebellion. He barked like a dog, not to amuse, but to expose, to wake people up, to remind them how much of their lives were nothing but performance. And that's what chasing women becomes. Performance. You become an actor in your own story. And the more you chase, the further you drift from the man beneath the mask. You want her to see you, but you don't even see yourself. You want her to admire you, but you loathe yourself. Every time you shrink, soften, bend, just to make her stay. And when she leaves, you shatter. Not because she broke you, but because you gave her something fragile and hoped she'd protect it. She didn't. Not because she's cruel, but because it was never her job. You handed her your self-worth, like glass, and said, "Please don't drop this." But she was never trained to carry you. She was just passing by. That's what Diogenes knew. The world owes you nothing. Not comfort, not clarity, not love. He lived like a ghost in plain sight, unimpressed by beauty, unshaken by rejection, unaffected by power, while other men stood in temples and courtyards, trying to impress, to win, to gain favor. Diogenes was digging in the dirt for truth, not because he had no options, but because he had no appetite for illusions. You hunger for illusion. You think if you play the part long enough, well enough, she'll choose you. But here's the truth. The longer you perform, the more she forgets who you truly are. And one day, when she walks away, she's not leaving you. She's leaving the mask. And you'll stand there, hollow, wondering if you ever existed at all. But you did. You do. And that is what Diogenes wants you to remember. Not through her eyes, not in her arms, but in yourself, in your breath, in your courage to stand alone, without applause, without attention, without the warm blanket of feminine approval. Because that is where your freedom begins. Unanswered messages. Maybe after seeing her laugh in someone else's arms. When the pain becomes too familiar, not sharp, not violent, just dull. Lingering. The ache of realizing you were never in control. That all your effort was ritual. That you weren't choosing, you were pleading to be chosen. Diogenes would have grabbed you by the collar, not to shame you, but to wake you. He lived among dogs not because he loved filth, but because dogs don't pretend. A dog doesn't chase what doesn't want to be caught. A dog doesn't build its identity around rejection. Diogenes believed living without pretense was the highest virtue. And every time you shapeshift to win her affection, you are pretending. Every time you dim your truth to seem acceptable, you are lying, not to her, but to yourself. When asked what he thought the most beautiful thing in the world was, he said, freedom of speech. And here you are, censoring your thoughts, biting your tongue, softening your truth. Afraid that if you speak with your full voice, she'll vanish. That's not love. That's captivity. You fear walking away. You fear silence. You fear rejection. Diogenes feared nothing. Because he owned nothing. Not even the illusion that another human being could define his worth. You, on the other hand, have built your identity like a sculpture of borrowed pieces. A little charm from here, a little vulnerability from there. A quote from a movie, a gesture copied from a man she once noticed. But here's the raw truth no one tells you. If she didn't want you in your silence, she doesn't deserve you when you sing. You've made your life a stage. And for what? A fleeting glance. A promise that changes with her mood. She doesn't even know what she wants. And yet, you've made her judge, jury, and executioner of your masculinity. Diogenes would have pissed on that altar. He understood something eternal. The man who doesn't chase is not alone, he is sovereign. The man who walks away is not rejected, he is choosing. To be unseen by her is not a curse, it is a test. Will you finally see yourself now that she won't? You say you miss her. But what you really miss is the permission she gave you to feel worthy. You miss the mirror, not the woman. Because if you truly loved her, you would love her even in her absence. And if you truly loved yourself, you would never need her to reflect that back. She is not your beginning. And she should not be your end. The beginning is the moment you stop running. The moment you sit like Diogenes in the sun and say, I have nothing. I need nothing. I am enough. Not with arrogance. Not with bitterness. But with liberation. Let her choose. Let her go. Let her love someone else. That is not your death. It is your unveiling. The shading of the false man who thought love must be earned through pain. The death of the boy who believed sacrifice was a requirement for being chosen. Diogenes didn't sacrifice. He simply refused to kneel. And that, my brother, is the lesson. Do not kneel. Not for beauty. Not for belonging. Not for the myth of completion. Stand. Stand in your hunger. Stand in your solitude. Stand in the unbearable clarity that no woman, no matter how soft her voice, how warm her touch, how deep her gaze, will ever complete a man who has not faced himself. She can join you. She can walk beside you. But she cannot rescue you from yourself. That is your burden. And your freedom. So burn the script. Kill the chase. Tear down the altar. Let her go. Because once you stop chasing, you'll realize you were never chasing her. You were chasing a version of yourself that never needed to chase at all. And that man, he's been waiting for you the whole time.